Welcome to my top 10 games of week 7. Another, and I've said this at the beginning of every video, but I'll say it again, another huge week of college football. I go through and I just kind of start clicking on the games I think are interesting, and I cipher them down into my top packet to look at, and then I pick the top 10 from that. Well, this week there were 17 games that I was thinking I could put into the top 10, and I had to whittle them down to 10. So an incredible week of college football. Make sure you stick around all the way to the end. That's where I'm going to premiere my number 1 game of the week. As always, start at number 10, go all the way through to number 1. Before we get into that real quick, just going to talk about what's been going on this season so far. Because I don't just premiere, show you what games are the top 10 games of the week here, but I also tell you what my predictions are, and I give a prediction against the both which team's going to win and against the point spread over and under. So so far on the season, I'm 37 out of 60. ESPN has me slightly ahead, is slightly ahead of me here right now at 41 to 60. They had a good week last week, but so did I. And then on the over under, that's where I'm really killing it this year. 44 out of 60 there, so I've only missed 16 times on the over-under. Had a little bit of a disappointing week last week on the over-under, but I expect to be back in the saddle this week. All right, so just reviewing real quick, last week the only 2 games that really threw me off. I was actually 7 out of 10 picking the games last week, wins and losses. Only 2 games that really threw me off were Nebraska versus Michigan. I was picking Nebraska for the upset. They had the game in the bag, and then in typical Nebraska fashion, totally fluffed it at the end there. So I don't think I'll be picking Nebraska to upset anybody else the rest of the season, because they've let me down one too many times before. Second or third time I picked them for the upset, and they haven't got it. So, and then the other one was Boise State versus BYU. I was being realistic. I was taking off my Boise State hat, trying to be honest across the board here, trying to just look at it from a purely analytical spot, and I was saying BYU for the win. I thought it'd be close, but I thought BYU got the win. Boise State came out, upset BYU in massive fashion, got their season back on track after starting 2-3. First time since 2001 they've done that. So both those games threw me off last week, but I'm expecting to be, like I said, back on the saddle for the over-under this week, and hopefully for another good week this week for the wins-losses. Okay, so as always, we're going to go through top 10 games of the week. We're going to look at others just real quick at the beginning here, other teams that got left on the outside. I'm going to give you the times and the television channels for all of these. All times will be in Eastern time. Times and television channels. We're going to look at the Vegas line. We're going to look at the ESPN percentage. We're going to look at top players for each of these matchups, and then we're going to give you a prediction for the wins, losses, and the over-under. So let's get started right here off the bat. Others are just on the outside, and again, definitely want to watch these, but they're just on the outside of the top 10 this week. Clemson versus Syracuse, a good game there on Friday. These both next games are on Friday. Cali versus Oregon. I think that could potentially. I mean, Cali's not having a great year this year. I think they're 1-4 so far, but it could be an upset. Oregon's already been upset once this year. Oregon might be overlooking them. And then number 10, Michigan State versus Indiana. Number 21, Texas A&M versus Mississippi State. And then number 25, Alabama versus number 21, Texas A&M versus Missouri, and number 5, Alabama versus Mississippi State. And then also Hawaii versus Nevada. All good games that you definitely want to keep an eye on this week. Make sure you watch in addition to this top 10. Let's get into the top 10 here real quick. All right, Fresno State versus at Wyoming. Fresno State 4-2, just outside the top 25. I truly just believe they deserve to be ranked if they were the AAC. I think they would be. East Coast bias playing out there. But I think that they would be ranked. They've played really, really well this season. Only loss is really close loss to Oregon, who's a good team this year. And then they also have a close loss to Hawaii. So getting beat up by a tough Mountain West Conference there. So they have another tough game against Wyoming here, trying to establish themselves again this season. I think one of the best, if not the best teams in the Mountain West as far as overall teams goes in this Fresno State team. It's at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time on FS2. Fresno State is favored by 3.5 here, and I didn't actually, in my hurry here, I didn't actually write down the percentage, but ESPN is giving Fresno State the percentage win on this. They're favoring Fresno State in this, and I'll just put that in the remarks section of the video talking about what that is. So anyhow, top player of the game for this one is going to be Jake Haener. He is if Fresno State was undefeated, I think he would be a dark horse Heisman candidate. As it is, Fresno State 2-loss record is probably going to keep him out of that, but he is playing amazing. He's third in the country with 2,230 yards passing, and he so far has 18 touchdown passes, which is 5th in the country. So top 5 in two important categories there. He is really the reason this Fresno State team is having so much success, though their defense is playing really, really well as well. Just like I said, all-around great Fresno State team. I think Fresno State does get the win in this one. I'm calling over on the over-under. But this is a big game, like I said, because it's a great matchup. You're going to want to watch this game. I think it's going to be a close game between a very good Wyoming team who had their first loss last week against Air Force. So you're going to want to watch this game because I think it'll be good, but it also has big ramifications for the Mountain West, for that West Division, for Fresno State trying to go up against an undefeated San Diego State, a good Nevada team. These wins, even though they're not head-to-head in their own division, are still going to matter at the end of the year. Wins and losses for any Mountain West team played is going to matter at the end of the year for determining who gets that shot at the Mountain West Championship game. All right, number 9 here on the list, 4-1 Army at 2-3 Wisconsin, 8 p.m. on Big Ten Network. Now, this game doesn't have huge ramifications, but I think it's a really good game to watch. Wisconsin is favored in this one by 14 points, and they are given a 79.8% chance according to ESPN. But I think that Army is Wisconsin, better team overall because they're Power 5, better players on their roster. But Army is a good team this year. They had a pretty good season last year. While I talk here, I'll just look up their record. There it is. So they had a pretty good season, a really good season for them actually last year. The 9-3 record, even though they 5-8 year before that, but 9-3 record last season. They're already on track with a good record this year, 4-1 so far this season. This is a good Army team, and the top player of the game here is one of the reasons they're having such a good season is Christian Anderson. He's thrown so far for 187 yards. So Army, like all the academy teams, is an option offense. But he still has a little bit of an arm here. Thrown for 187 yards, 3 touchdowns. The big thing here is that all those passes he's completed have all been big plays. 12.5 yards per throw average, throw completion there for per pass. And then the big thing here, 471 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns. He's averaging 7 yards per carry. Army can definitely go in and win this one. I am putting Wisconsin on upset alert. I think Army can come in here and upset Wisconsin. It is a big game for Army, that one of 2 Power 5 matchups that they have on this season. This one and Wake Forest are the 2 Power 5 matchups that they have. But I think Army can come in here and get this win in very exciting fashion. I'm putting Army for the win, but I'm calling under on the over-under. All right, TCU at Oklahoma. 3-2 TCU going up to 6-0 Oklahoma. Number 4 in the nation. 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, ABC. Now, you wouldn't probably think, if you hadn't watched last week's games, that this would be that big of a matchup here. But Oklahoma is not very good this year. Oklahoma, they're rated in the top 4. They're undefeated. Or top 5, they're on number 4. They're undefeated, but they have been so close to losing pretty much every single game. Pretty much, I mean, they almost lost to Tulane, who's not good this year. It's not a good Tulane team to lose to. They almost lost to Tulane. They almost lost to West Virginia. They almost lost to Texas. They benched their starting quarterback, their number 1 draft pick caliber quarterback, in favor of a true freshman because of Spencer Rattler's struggles there. So this is an Oklahoma team that is struggling mightily. This is also a TCU team that's been competitive in matchups with them in the past. It's not necessarily a great TCU team this year, 3-2, but this is a TCU team that's always competitive, is always able to go out and get a surprise win. As a Boise State fan, this is hard for me because I hate both of these teams. Well, hate is a strong word. I don't necessarily hate Oklahoma, more of a dislike, but I hate TCU. As a Boise State fan, we really hate TCU. Go back and look in the record books there for a little bit of why. But there's big matchups in the past against TCU, and there's been pretty bitter as well. So it's hard for me to decide who I want to root for on this one. But this isn't about rooting. This is about analysis and who I think is going to win this. So it's always a hard one to watch TCU versus Oklahoma because I never know who I want to win. But Spence, the key player for this one is really going to be quarterback for Oklahoma. Who's going to be the starter? Spencer Rattler, 1,371 yards passing. He actually had he's having his best season as far as completion percentage, 75% completion percentage, which is really high. Highest last year, I think, was 69% overall, 68%, something like that. I was looking it up on ESPN before I did the video, but I know 75% is his highest. But the big number here, only 10 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. He's not been reliable. He's been a big reason that they have been faltering in these games. Besides, I mean, there's other reasons as well, but he's been a big reason, part of it. And he got pulled because he wasn't playing well against Texas early in that one. The freshman, the true freshman, Caleb Williams comes in here, throws for 16 times for 25. He completes 16 out of 25, throws for 212 yards, 2 touchdowns, also gets a rushing touchdown for 88 yards, and wins the game for Texas. They come back from, I believe they had, sorry, for Oklahoma. They had, at one point, I think, a 21-point deficit, and then at the half, they had like man, what was it? It was like 17-point or 15-point deficit. It was huge. It was big. I mean, Texas looked like they were running away with this one, and Oklahoma managed to come back and win this game, one of the greatest games to watch of the weekend. But there's another reason why you would think you should be worried here for Oklahoma, in addition to their struggles. This is also, last week, 2 unbeaten top 10 teams lost to teams with 2 or more losses. So, Alabama fell to Texas A&M. That was the big headliner. But also BYU, Boise State, my Boise State Broncos, went out and beat BYU. So this was a huge weekend last week. We could see another one of those this week if some of these unbeaten teams aren't careful. Oklahoma cannot overlook TCU, and they might be overlooking TCU a little bit with some bigger games down the road after this matchup. So, having said that, I do think that Oklahoma will get the win in this one against TCU, but I don't think that it's going to be as high as they're calling it with 13.5 spread. I think it is going to be under on the over-under. I think it's going to be close, like all of Oklahoma's games have been, and that key player decision is going to come down to who they end up starting at quarterback and how that person ends up playing. Does Spencer Rattler get the start and get redemption, or does Caleb Williams get the start and show? Does he show that he's up to it? If true freshman quarterback came in and played well last week, does he build on that, or does he, in kind of true freshman form, get a little bit behind the game and that end up costing them in this one? So we'll have to see. It didn't last week. He played great last week. If he gets a start, I have confidence in Oklahoma. But I am calling Oklahoma in this one, but it is going to be closer, the experts are saying. All right, number 7 matchup, 4-2 Auburn versus number 17, 4-2 Arkansas. So same record, but a little bit overall, but different teams played, obviously. Auburn was in the rankings until last week when they ended up losing to Georgia, and a big part of that was just couldn't get the offense going, but no one's been able to get the offense going against Georgia. They've been incredible this season. They're later on our list, so I'll talk about them here later. But Arkansas is favored, 3.5, 60.4% chance of winning. It's really going to be the battle of quarterbacks. Whichever one of them is able to show up in this one is going to get the win. And both of them have struggled in games and had big moments in games. Number 1 quarterback here is Jefferson for Arkansas. He's had the better season overall as far as consistency goes, I think. I think he's also a little bit more athletic. He has the running and the passing abilities. 1,235 yards passing so far this season, 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. And just last week, he actually had just last week he actually had 326 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. He also rushed for 85 yards and 3 touchdowns. So this is a big play making ability quarterback here who can also get it done in the run game. Now, Bo Nix for Auburn, which Bo Nix are we going to see? And it really varies from game to game. So far this season, 1,196 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception, really hasn't been prolific, has been benched. He just isn't showing that the Bo Nix of his freshman year for sure. He's looking a lot more like he has been in the last couple of last season especially. We're going to see if he can get back on track in this one. It's going to take all of him and all of him being 100% into this game to be able to get Ole Miss the win in this matchup. To get Auburn. I'm thinking about last week. Get Auburn the win in this matchup. Now, Arkansas and Ole Miss, that's what I was trying to say. Arkansas and Ole Miss went down to the wire last week, literally. That was a massive offensive game. I think both teams ended up putting up over 600 yards. Came down to 1-point win at the end of that for Ole Miss, getting the win just barely. Arkansas a little deflated after that, and they played a long, hard-fought battle. Their players a little bit more exhausted, a little more beat up coming into this one. That could play favors for Auburn. Auburn also a team with a new head coach in Brian Harsin, former Boise State coach, coming in. I thought he's had a good year. I think he's had a really good year so far to start this season. And Auburn is actually doing exactly as I predicted they would coming into this year. I actually predicted that they would be sitting here at, actually, they have one more loss than I thought they would. I thought they'd be sitting in this game at 5-1, not 4-2. I thought they could go in and win at Penn State, and if it hadn't been for the refs, they might have been able to win that game. So Auburn pretty much having the season I expected them to, and they did end up losing to Georgia like I thought they would. I thought they'd be able to come in here and get a win against Arkansas in my preseason prediction, but Arkansas is having a much better year than I thought they did. This is a big test for Arkansas, for Brian Harsin, seeing where this team is and how far they've come so far under his leadership. I think this is a Brian Harsin team that is going to be very good going forward into the future, better than they have been, more consistent than they have been in past seasons under Gus Malzahn. But I think that it is a rebuild year. They're still trying to figure things out, and Bo Nix is really dragging this team down. I don't think he has the game necessary to get this win. I think Arkansas does pull off the win in this, and it's going to be, I think, not much higher than that 3.5, but slightly above. I'm calling over on the over-under. All right, BYU versus Baylor. Number 6 here, number 19 BYU, 5-1. Previously number 10 before the loss to Boise State. Going up against 5-1 Baylor, who was ranked before another team that Boise State played. Oklahoma State beat them, and then they dropped out of the top 25. It's going to be 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Oh, and that last game is at noon on CBS. I don't know if I ever said that. So 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Baylor is favored by 6.5 points, and Baylor is given a 73.2% chance of winning. I think that's high. This is a BYU team that was, in their mindset, disappointing against Boise State. They hadn't turned the ball over all season on the ground. They hadn't had any fumbles all season. They fumbled it 3 times against Boise State. Their quarterback play had been one of the strengths of this team, and the quarterback play was not a strength of the team last week, and actually interception basically ended the game there for them with Boise State's Kaniho going up and grabbing that to end their last drive, their last attempt to stay in this game and get within a score. So this really hasn't been their game. This wasn't their game last week, but this is a good BYU, and this is still their season. That's what I was trying to say. This is still their season. This is a good BYU team that, going back the last 2 seasons, only has 2 losses, 1 to Boise State, 1 to Coastal Carolina, and that is not bad. It's a good Coastal Carolina team, a top-ranked Coastal Carolina team that they haven't lost to, and it's a Boise State team that is always going to be able to go out and beat someone. Boise State is not a team that someone should feel ashamed to having lost to. This is still a good BYU team, but it's going to depend on their quarterback play. Hall, Romney, or Jacob Conover, whichever one gets to start in this one. Hall, according to reports, was not 100% in that Boise State game. That's not why they lost. The turnovers is definitely why they lost. The fumbles on the ground, and Boise State just actually being able to put together a running game, which is surprising. So Boise State definitely earned that game, but that quarterback play definitely hindered BYU in that matchup because of what is saying not 100% from Hall in that game. So who starts this one? Hall, Romney, or Jacob Conover? Romney had a concussion that he was dealing with. That's why he didn't get a chance to potentially come in and play in that Boise State game. I think he should be good to go this week. Honestly, I like BYU better when Romney is at the helm here. I think he's a more accurate quarterback, and he ends up bringing more to this offense overall, definitely in the passing game, even if he doesn't necessarily have Hall's legs. So I think that this is a BYU team that's going to be better in this one. I think they're going to return to their early 5 games of the season form, and that Boise State game is not going to define their season. It has knocked them out of the playoffs, but they can still go to the New Year's Six if they win out. I think they start that again this week with a win against Baylor. I think a big part of that is going to be Algier. I'm enunciating that one because I mispronounced him in the Boise State versus preview video, and BYU fans got mad. So Algier in this one. I hope should be saying it right this time. 642 yards rushing so far this season, 8 touchdowns. A little bit of a disappointing week last week, 73 yards rushing, but he's just coming off a 200-yard game against Utah State. So a good running back who can take over a game, and that's going to be important in this one with the quarterback situation kind of being up in the air for BYU. But I think that they establish themselves. They're playing angry. They're playing with a chip on their shoulder. The nation doesn't think the same about them that they did coming into that Boise State game, and they know that. They want to prove that they're still a team that needs to be taken seriously as one of the top teams in the country. I think that they're going to have a great game in this one. I am predicting BYU win and under on the over-under. Baylor, because it is actually a pretty significant upset here with BYU is the favorite team. Not the favorite team, they're the higher ranked team, but Baylor's given a 73.2% chance, so I'm going to call this an upset. Baylor, bam, 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 I am putting you on upset alert here. BYU going to come in, surprise a lot of folks, and get this win. All right, Air Force versus Boise State, and I'm not going to go in depth because I'm already pushing 19 minutes, and I just did a full video that I just released talking about the Boise State versus Air Force game. So if you want to watch that, I'm going to put the link in the description. You can go watch that game. But just really quick overall, 9 p.m. Eastern Time on FS1. Boise State is 3-3. Air Force is 5-1. Boise State is favored by 4 points, and they're given a 78.6% chance of winning. It's a 6-3 overall in the series record here. Boise State owns the series so far, 6-3, has a 4-game winning streak, but Air Force also went on a 3-game winning streak of themselves the last time Boise State had coaching changeover. 2014 to 2016, Brian Harsin's first year at Boise State. It took them a while to figure out this. They run the option offense for Air Force. Will we see another series like that with Air Force kind of this new Boise State defense having issues figuring out the Air Force offense? We'll see in this one because it's going to be a huge testing ground for the Boise State coaching staff overall to show where they are and what they've been able to install into this team so far. Really, what level they're playing at and what Boise State's future looks like with this coaching staff at the helm. So, big game for Boise State and Air Force in this one. It's a good. I'm putting them at number 5 here because I think it's going to be a really good matchup. It is a rivalry game, but it's also a huge game for determining the Mountain Division of the Mountain West. Both of these teams, Colorado State technically is the number 1 in the conference after one Mountain Division game played, or one Mountain West game played so far, but they're terrible this season. They lost to Vanderbilt. They're not going to be an issue. So really, Air Force owns the head-to-head against Wyoming. They're 2-1, and Boise State owns the head-to-head against Utah State. Both of these teams are the 2 top teams in the division for the Mountain. I think they're going to be the 2 teams at the end of the year that are going to be neck and neck for that. And this head-to-head is going to be huge for that. That's one of the reasons they're number 5. Other reason is this is just a great game. You're definitely going to want to watch this one. Stay up late on Saturday. Pour yourself some energy drink or something, and make sure you watch this game. All right, number 4 overall, 3-2 UCF at number 3, 5-0 Cincinnati. Noon Eastern Time on ABC. The primetime slot, it's a huge game. It's not as huge as it could have been because since UCF lost their absolute Heisman quarterback or Heisman candidate quarterback early in the season in the loss to Louisville. If it wasn't for that injury, I think that they would have been able to win against Louisville in that one. It was a very, very close game, came down to the wire. So lost their starting quarterback in that game, and that Dylan Gabriel's, and that has really, really hurt them. Lost to Navy on their record, struggled last week in their game against, I don't remember who they played, but East Carolina. East Carolina struggled last week against East Carolina. So this is not as potent a UCF team, but this is a rivalry between UCF and Cincinnati. These have been the 2 top teams that have been competing the last few years, been competing for that top slot in the American Athletic Conference, and Cincinnati has a lot on the line here. At number 3, 5-0 coming into this one. It's a chance for, like I was talking about, Boise State versus Air Force being a proving chance for Andy Avalos. This is a proving ground for Gus Malzahn, showing what can he do with his team. Is he a team with a quarterback, or is he a team with a team? Is he a team? Is he a coach that has a team that he can build, or is he just relying on one player? He kind of did that a little bit at Auburn, relying on Bo Nix. Is he doing that here at UCF? Now, it's not his offense, it's not his team. He inherited this team. He hasn't brought in his players, but has he been putting in the groundwork to be able to create a program that is able to have that next man up mentality? That's where Power 5 teams are that's why Power 5 teams are so dominant. That's what defines them, is that those second string guys are able to come in and play as well as the first string guys. And a lot of it has to do with recruiting, but also a lot of it has to do with the coaching. You can take anybody with the right coaching and turn them into a superstar in the right offense if you're able to craft it to their playmaking and their abilities. So this is going to be a big question mark for UCF. They're not favored in this one. Cincinnati's given an 89.7% chance of winning. Cincinnati's given a 21-point spread here by Vegas. So it's not predicted to be a close game. It's not predicted to be a game where UCF is in this one. But I think they can be. I think it's a rivalry. I think it'll be closer than the experts are saying. The key player here is going to be the Cincinnati quarterback, Desmond Ridder. The 6'4" Desmond Ridder, who has passed for over 1,300 yards passing, 12 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Definitely a first-round contender, first-round draft pick contender. Just playing amazing. And if he takes them to the playoffs, which if Cincinnati wins out, they will be in the playoffs. If he takes them there, he's definitely going to be in the top first-round draft pick contenders there. So Cincinnati here, a team that is playing for a lot, but I think that they might be overlooking UCF a little bit. It's hard to overlook a team like UCF, but they are in a down year. They're 3-2. But guess what? A 3-2 Texas A&M team upset an undefeated Alabama, who was ranked higher than Cincinnati, a number 2 Alabama team, and Boise State upset with 3-3, worse record than UCF. 2-3, so worse record than UCF, upset a number 10 BYU team, which I think across the board, when you compare these two teams, BYU and Cincinnati, I'm not going to say one's better than the other, but they're very, very equal. When they're comparing Cincinnati versus BYU, they're very, very equally matched. So UCF, they're not just one team. They're not just one player on this roster. Bowser is an amazing running back. He ran all over Boise State when they played. So they're not. They shouldn't be just one player. They've been trying to reset and find themselves again after losing Dylan Gabriel. I think we're going to see a big step forward here. I don't remember who's starting for them. I think it's Quadri Jones, but I'm not entirely sure. But whoever it is, I think is going to show a big step forward as this team is overall takes a big step forward to this one. I do think Cincinnati hangs on for the win, but I don't think it's going to be 21 points. I think it's going to be much, much less than that. So I'm calling under on the over-under, and I think it's going to be a very exciting game to watch. Big determiner here. Not necessarily for who's going to win the AAC, though that could be up in the air if Cincinnati loses. But for Cincinnati, for what they're playing for right now, they're not playing for an American Athletic Conference Championship. They're not playing for New Year's Six. They're playing for the playoffs. That's where they think they're supposed to be. That's where they think they can be. And honestly, if they win out, they will be there. But it starts with getting over UCF here. All right, number 3. We're into the top 3 games of the week, and we're at 25 minutes. I'm going to try and wrap this up at like 30 minutes. We're going to see what we can do. All right. Number 3 here, number 11, 6-0 Kentucky at number 1, 6-0 Georgia, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on CBS. Georgia favored huge in this one, 22.5 points, and given a 95.4% chance of winning. They have their top player of the game for this one is the Georgia defense. They are just at the whole defense. They are number 1 defense overall. They're allowing not rushing, not passing, but both of them together, 201.2 yards per game. That is it. And this is an amazing stat. I did not know this before I started researching for this. They have only allowed 2 offensive touchdowns. There's 3 touchdowns period against Georgia this year, but one of those was a interception, a pick 6 by UAB. But they've only allowed 2 offensive touchdowns. That is mind-blowing. And it's not like they've been going out and playing Conference USA teams. I mean, this is, well, they have, but as overall, they're playing an SEC schedule. They're not every single game has been a Conference USA team. This is a huge game for Georgia over a number undefeated Kentucky. They've already gone off and destroyed Arkansas and who was it? Ole Miss, I think. Anyhow, they've already blown out a bunch of big teams already this season. They are shaping up. They're number 1 in the country right now. Georgia has come so close so many times and not got there. And this is their season. That's what they're thinking. And they definitely have a chance to go down and win it at the end here. But so it starts with getting over a big win here against Kentucky. This is a huge game for determining. They're both in the same division, so this is a big head-to-head. I think Georgia does get the win. I think it will be a big win, but I think Kentucky's good enough to stay under that 22.5. I think Georgia will get the win here, under the over-under. All right, number 2 game in the nation here, down to our top 2. Number 12, 5-0 OSU, Oklahoma State, not Ohio State. Oklahoma State at 25, 4-2 Texas, who just came off of that nail-biter in the Red River rivalry against the other team from Oklahoma. Texas is favored by 5.5 points and given a 78.4% chance of winning this one. It's at noon on Fox. This is a good Oklahoma State team. This is an Oklahoma State team that started off the season with struggles, but they didn't lose. They were closer. They didn't play very well, but they didn't lose. And then that win against Boise State really sparked them. And the main reason that they got sparked in that game is Warren. Warren, the running back here for Oklahoma State, had 218 yards rushing against Boise State. Prior to that game, prior to the first 2 games of the season, so that was the 3rd game for Oklahoma State, the first 2 games of the season, he had 46 yards rushing. Against Boise State, he had 218, and he hasn't stopped. He had 218, 123 against Kent State, and 125 versus Baylor. They have been run with him, and he has been a big part of their success so far this season. He has rushed so far for 512 yards and 6 touchdowns. But again, most of that's come in the last 3 games. He is hot. He is showing that he is one of the top running backs in the Big 12 this year, and he is having a great season. Texas is like I said, I was talking about Arkansas versus Ole Miss being a little bit beat up there because of how long that game went on. Well, the same thing with Texas versus Oklahoma. They just had a hugely just massively deflating loss to Oklahoma, and now they got to turn around, get back on, and try to go and beat Oklahoma State. And this is an Oklahoma State team that overall is on a better track, is playing at a higher level right now than Oklahoma. I'm not going to go so far as to say that they're better than Oklahoma, because Oklahoma's still a good team, but they are a team that is right now playing better than Oklahoma. They had a big win against Kansas State, double-digit win against Kansas State, a double-possession win against Kansas State, and a double-possession win against Baylor. Both of those teams are good teams from the Big 12. Even if they aren't even if they're not undefeated or ranked anymore, they're still good teams out of the Big 12. I think Oklahoma State continues those winning ways, upsets Texas here, even though they're ranked higher. Texas is given the percentage chance of winning on this one. I'm not going to put upset alert because they are ranked significantly higher than Texas on this one. But I think Oklahoma State does go out, get the win at Texas, and Texas drops to 4-3. For another disappointing season for Texas. It's been so long since Texas got a chance to be good. I think they're going to have to keep on waiting. And joining the SEC, they might have to keep on waiting for the next 30 years. I don't know. But it's not going to come this season. Oklahoma State is the hot team. They're the team. Oklahoma is a down away from losing a game and being out of the playoffs. But Oklahoma State might be the best chance that the Big 12 has for getting a team to the playoffs this season. We'll have to see how it goes at the end of the year. All right, so I'm calling Oklahoma State win over on the over-under. All right, the number one game of the week, and this is going to surprise some people. It really, really is. But I just think that this matchup, as far as the quality of the game, what it means for one of these programs, as far as their season goals, and what it means for these two teams overall, I think that this is the top game for all of those reasons. It is number 24, 5-0 San Diego State at 3-3 San Jose State. This Friday at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Super late game. A lot of people probably won't end up watching, and that is a shame because this, to me, is the best game of the week. San Diego State is 5-0, and they are not ranked, which is they are ranked, but they're only ranked at number 24. They're not inside the top 20, and they're only ranked at number 24, despite having 2 Power 5 wins against Arizona and Utah, and having a better overall record as far as Power 5 wins and really strength of schedule overall than SMU, and SMU is ranked ahead of them. This is absolutely because of East Coast bias. Nobody's watching San Diego State teams. Nobody's watching Mountain West team games, so they get ranked lower than the AAC. But San Diego State, if they were in the AAC with the schedule they've had so far and the wins that they've had so far, sitting at 5-0, they'd be in the top 20 and in the contention, not just for the New Year's Six, but potentially the playoffs. And I think that a win here against San Jose State helps make that case. Every game that San Diego State has into the end of the year is going to be making that case for why they should be the contender. Not necessarily for the playoffs, because that comes after a couple seasons of consecutive, winning all your games, years like Cincinnati's had, or close to it. But I think that they're going to make the case for if Cincinnati goes to the playoffs, that New Year's Six bowl is up for grabs. That the playoffs do not count towards the Group of 5 New Year's Six bowl automatic bowl bid. That's separate. It's just like if you're the conference champion of the SEC and you go to the top 4, you go to the New Year's Six. If you go to the playoffs, you're still sending a team from the SEC to the Sugar Bowl. They're going to get 2 teams into the New Year's Six. That's just going to be the second-ranked team that goes and played it. And when Boise State played Arizona in the 2014 Fiesta Bowl, they were playing the second-ranked team in the Pac-12 because the winner, Oregon, went to the playoffs. And it's the same thing for the Group of 5. So Cincinnati, I think that they're going to the playoffs this year. So that New Year's Six Bowl is wide open. Now, Coastal has maybe the inside track for it. We'll have to see how the committee, which is the ones actually making these decisions, when that poll comes out in a few weeks here, when that poll comes out, that's going to rework the entire landscape. And San Diego State getting a big win here to get to 6-0 against a rival, and this is a rival. San Diego State owns the rivalry so far 22-20, but it's one of the oldest rivalries in the Mountain West. A lot of young teams in the Mountain West, but it's one of the oldest rivalries in the Mountain West. It dates back to 1935, a game, by the way, that San Jose State won. But this is a rivalry game. San Diego State has owned it recently. They've won they've won. This says 17 straight, but I'm not sure that's correct. But they have won a lot of games in this rivalry in the recent history. But this is a game traditionally that has been a rivalry. San Diego State has been close to winning this one and upsetting San Diego State several times. And this is really going to determine if San Diego State gets to be that Mountain West team. Because I think at the end of the year, if Cincinnati is in the playoffs, SMU is not that good. They really are not that good. They're extremely overrated. Coastal Carolina, I think, is also, they have one of the weakest schedules of any top 25 team, if not the weakest. Their best win is against Kansas, and they struggled against Buffalo. They have one of the weakest schedules in the top 25. I think that an undefeated, if they are sitting at the end of the season, undefeated San Diego State team absolutely goes to New Year's Six. But it starts with a big win here against a rival in San Jose State that is also not just determining New Year's Six, but honestly, these two teams are in the same division. And San Diego State is competing against Fresno State, Nevada, and themselves. Those are kind of the three main teams they're pushing for that West Division. And if San Diego State drops one game, they might be out of that hunt for the West Division here. Especially if it's within their own conference and within their own division, and a game against San Diego State is huge there. So San Diego State is favored by 9 points and given a 76.2% chance of winning. The top quarterbacks here are going to be Nick Starkel for San Jose State. 992 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Has not had the season that he wanted so far, but San Jose State can get their season back on track with a win here against San Diego State. And then the top running back in this one, I'm giving 2 players, is going to be Greg Bell for San Diego State, a passing game that's not necessarily been very consistent, but he has 520 yards rushing. But San Diego State has had a massive rush offense. They have, in addition to Greg Bell, 5 players that have rushed for over 100 yards this season. 5 that have rushed for over 100 yards this season. So it's going to be, San Diego State has multiple players that can run the ball in this offense. They're going to be incredibly hard to maintain. But this is going to be a very, very close matchup between San Diego State and San Diego State late on Friday. Definitely want to stay up and watch that game. I'm calling San Diego State for the win in this one in a close fought game that's close to the experts predict. I'm calling under on the over-under. But this is, no doubt, in my mind, the top game as far as ramifications on the Group of 5 New Year's shot on the hunt for the New Year's Six, considering that Cincinnati is going to be in the playoffs. This is the best game of the week as far as ramifications for that Group of 5, New Year's Six, ramifications for the Mountain West, and ramifications for the West Division. This is a massive game, in addition to just being a great rivalry game that is going to see a lot of sparks fly from these two teams from California. All right, thank you for watching this video. Make sure you let me know what your top game of the week is, or top games, which games you thought I got wrong or right, what your own predictions are. And as always, if you haven't before, make sure you like and subscribe. You don't want to miss out on any great college football content. It's not just Boise State stuff, college football stuff in general. So make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you for watching this video. And as always, go Big Blue!